Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stop.Sit.Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Friday facts, C-sections. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to ask all the questions because I don't know anything and you guys are going to answer them all. But who do we have with us today?
I'm Grace. I'm from California. I am a one-time surrogate. I'm on my second journey, and it's going to be my fourth C-section.
I am Tara. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm on my third journey, and it will be my fourth C-section.
Oh, look at that. And Mom, how many did you have?
2.
Okay. And I have had none. Knock on wood.
We're all seasoned veterans.
I love it.
Between the 4 of us, there's still plenty of C-sections to go around.
Totally.
What's the limit of total C-sections for surrogates right now? How many's got fingers?
So
3?
it depends. Some
Oh.
say only 1. Some I've heard up to so I've had 3, so this will be my 4th, and then I'm technically cut off. But I've also been told that if I really wanted to, I could fly. And I think that Canada has like the restrictions up to maybe 4. But at this point, I'm like, I think after everything that I've been through with this, I think that I'm very much good at this being my last surrogacy pregnancy.
Gotcha. Okay.
I got you.
But they are really strict about it, which is really weird because
Yeah.
I would never go into surrogacy with knowing that like something bad could happen with having C-sections. After my last C-section, I did have my doctor like look over my uterus. He said, it looks great. It's not too thin. The scar looks great. So I always like get a little bit irritated when the agency is like, well, the fertility clinic isn't going to accept you because you've had 3. I'm like, yeah, well, I can still carry a perfect pregnancy. My
Right.
C-section has nothing to do with anything. So that
Yeah.
always irritates me.
Yeah. No, it's very true though. I know I never understood why C-sections mattered, especially if you're healthy and you're, you know, if you're under all of if you're a good candidate, I don't know what that, basically,
Right.
I don't know why that would matter, but maybe there's something that they're figuring out and we don't know about. Who knows? I don't know.
The most I've seen, like the highest limit I've seen is 3.
Mhm.
And I was talking to a surrogate that I had just met, and I was telling her how this would be probably my last journey because it would be my 4th C-section.
Yeah.
She was like, no, I've seen lots of agencies. We'll find
Right.
you one that can do another C-section.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm like, but wait, I thought that there were rules.
Yeah, I think for my health, everybody's health, it would be best to save the best for last and stop at this one.
I get that. And I'm not because I've had C-sections, but because I'll have had enough pregnancies. This is my last one. So
Yeah.
Do they tell you no after this one?
they advise against it and it becomes really tricky. So it's just like, unless you go independent, but like that sounds like a whole other ball game that I'm just like, I don't know if I want to play with that.
And if you're not finished growing your own family either, you have to be mindful of that
Right.
too.
Yeah.
I think the more that you've had to, from what I understand, the way, whether it's pregnancies or C-sections, the perceived risks for the intended parents, just from whatever their knowledge is, it could be perceived as higher risk, and you may not be as desirable of a candidate when it comes to matching.
Right. That's true.
Okay.
Whatever. Hurts my feelings.
No. I just want to do it forever.
Like, why do you have to tell me I'm done? I wanted to decide.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
if so-and-so can go on and have 20 plus children herself, like,
right?
Can't I do this for other people? It's fine. Been a while since we've done one of these, but we're excited. I'm gonna kind of let my mom take over this one because I have nothing but questions for you ladies. So we're gonna start talking about C-sections.
Okay. So like just a little background, like I had a C-section with the triplets because obviously they weren't coming out vaginally.
Well, BB birthed them.
That is like such a misrepresentation of how a triplet pregnancy goes, but that's another story. Yikes. Yeah, mine were bunk bed 1, 2, 3. So boom, I had to have a C-section. And that's the first one I had. So that was pretty daunting. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, what's the recovery? Yeah, I didn't know any of it. But then after that, I couldn't do VBAC. I had to go another C-section. So that's all I've known since then. But have you, either of you done VBAC after C-section?
I tried, but not successful.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask what you mean by like not success? Like your body wasn't going to let you do it?
I guess I shouldn't even say that it wasn't like that I had tried. We tried, but then my first time being a surrogate, I was going to go for a VBAC during my matching process. I had told everybody that I'm doing a VBAC. It was very important to me to do that. But then I was matched with intended parents who had birth trauma before. They had a stillborn with their other surrogate. And at matching, they said yes, they are totally okay with me having a VBAC. But then once things went like by 20 weeks, she was like telling me that I should have a repeat C-section. I was like, no, I'm a good candidate for a VBAC. So then I said, no, it's very important to me that I have a VBAC. But then once we got to 40 weeks and 3 days, I wasn't progressing whatsoever. And my doctor said, well, we can't really induce because of uterine rupture.
Okay.
And I wasn't progressing, and my intended parents were like, look, we are really scared about this. Can we please have a C-section? I was like, you know what? Yes, we'll just have a repeat C-section because I completely understand that you have trauma, and I just honored that for them.
That was very nice. Yeah.
Again, I'm just gonna ask all the questions here. What makes a good candidate for a VBAC?
I believe enough time that has passed, at least I think it's 18 months or more for after having a C-section, which it had been like 5 years since for me, over 5 years. And then I think just making sure that there's not a lot of scar tissue. I'm not even sure as to what like a good candidate would be. I think just at least one C-section.
There's like there's a calculator you can use on.
Really?
Yeah, if you just Google C-section calculator, and I'm not sure what society, because I know there's the like American Society of Obstetrics, but you can go in there and put in your details and it will tell you if you're a good candidate or not.
Wow, that's awesome. I wish I would have known about that.
I'm not a good candidate anymore.
And then your doc has to like your OB has to say, yeah, it's okay to do. I didn't even want to try. I was like, yeah, no, because that was a whole nother thing in mine. I was like, no, we won't even try. But so C-sections, like the recovery on that's longer. I mean, that's just on the table, but that's just longer because you're being literally filleted. Your organs are being put out on the table or up on top of you to get these babies out, and then they're put back in. And then you're sewed up. So like from time baby or babies come out till you getting back to recovery and start feeling like a normal person is like a good hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah. And you're numb from the waist down, correct? I mean, well, I was at the block all the way down. So you can't walk. So you're on a catheter for at least 24 hours to pee.
Why are your hands, but like, why are both hands to the side? Like it's like you're like on a cross. Like, I don't understand that because like I get I know the IV in one hand,
blood
but
pressure.
Your other hand there.
Blood pressure. Blood pressure on one, IV on the other.
My last 2 C-sections, they let me have my arms free. And I know this sounds a little crazy, but my last one, well, with my second one, they let me have my arms free, but I asked them to strap me down because I had shakiness from the medication and I felt really unstable. So I asked them to strap my arms down. And then with my last C-section, it was my first surrogate. I had my arms free and they let me have my phone, which I thought was really cool, but weird.
Wow.
That is cool.
And I was texting the parents during the procedure and like right after, and it was cool, but also it felt so bizarre to be using my phone in the operating room.
Right? When you're totally numb and they're just tugging and pulling and you're like, oh, I guess they're getting babies out. Like, I don't know.
Grace said it, so now I get to ask it. Felt weird, right? Does it feel weird? Like, do you feel things?
You can feel pressure, just not pain. Like, I don't know if you've ever had numbness anywhere. Like, I still have numbness right now on the sides of my legs, like on the outer thighs from my injections this last round.
Oh, injection. Okay, you scared me. I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay.
Not from
Yeah.
my C-section still, but on my thighs from the injections.
Yeah.
And you can feel like pressure and movement and stuff,
Mhm.
but you can't feel pain.
Pain.
And then even like when they touch your skin, you can't really feel anything. It's like when they're tugging and pulling, because stuff is moving around pretty aggressively.
Mhm.
So
Right.
you can feel all that.
And you can hear usually when they break the water, because they literally bring the baby out usually in the
Mhm.
sack and then pop it, and then okay, baby's here. And you can either sometimes feel that or hear that water. And sometimes they'll break it inside, but it's a little cleaner to do it outside because they can catch it all. But yeah, you can hear that. So there's a lot, because there's usually a drape right here, like drape. You
Yeah.
can't see nothing.
You can smell the
Oh,
cauterization.
yes,
That one
yes,
gets me.
yes, yes.
I was
And
gonna
I had
ask if you could smell things, but like I didn't want to know, but like I wanted to know. 'Cause,
and I
like,
had my tubes tied during the triplet C-section. So that was even more burning and more cauterization. I'm like, oh, y'all okay down there? Is there a fire? Like, woo, oh, yuck. Yeah. But hey, it is what it is. But and depending on the incision they make, I'm not sure how large you girls' incisions are.
I put like
Yours-
this.
Okay.
Yeah,
How about
mine's
you, Grace?
small
Not
too.
like that.
Pretty
Yeah.
small,
So I'm like this.
well, no one can see where your fingers are.
Here we go, like this. I mean, we're almost from one hip to the other hip because they were getting 3 out. Yeah. It was, I'm like, and when I was done, we didn't talk about that ahead of time, but I'm like, why do we have to be why do they have to go so big when these babies were little to begin with, right? I didn't know. And nobody could ever give me an answer. So it is what it is. They couldn't stop. Like it was already done. I'm like, what the hell? Yeah. So that was a longer recovery. When you sneeze, when you cough, like it's difficult because it's all in your abdomen, right?
Yeah,
So,
you hold something and
yep,
then
hold a
cough or
pillow,
laugh and
hold a thick jacket so that you can brace yourself so then you can laugh or cough or sneeze. Yeah, because it
Have
puts a lot of muscle strain.
have you ladies had vaginal births as well? Or do you just
Mm-mm.
go, no, you guys have only ever had C-sections?
Yep.
And I've had vaginal.
Okay. Because I was just wondering if like you compare the both, because I know some people are
Way
like, oh, I
prefer
would rather take a C-section, and then other people are like, I'd rather have a vaginal. And I'm like,
vaginal.
okay.
Vaginal because you had vaginals, Kenny. You can go
I know.
home
I,
20
I'm aware.
so
I went
soon
home 24 hours after my
after your C.
yeah.
with all of
Yeah.
them.
With especially the last one, the other one I stayed because he was a boy and parents stayed longer, so I just stayed longer. But with the last one, I went home within 24 hours. I was up and walking as soon as the numbness wore off.
Good
I
for
was up
you.
walking around. I
Good
always
for
make
you.
sure I do that because I feel like I was always told from the first time I had a C-section, the sooner you get up and walk, the better you're going to start to feel. So, and you can because I want you to start passing gas and doing all
Right.
everything like peeing and on your own to make
Yep.
sure everything went well during surgery.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Wow.
you have to like hit a bunch of check marks before you
Yeah.
can go home after. Whereas like if you vaginal and like nothing dramatic traumatic happens, then you're good to go within 24 hours at least,
Mhm.
maybe 12 if you're the surrogate. My hospital was like, well, you could go in 12, and I'm like, maybe. The baby has to stay 24,
Mhm.
but surrogate doesn't. That's an interesting one, but. Okay, so I'm gonna ask as the person who doesn't have C-sections in her life currently, and for people who hear about them, because they sound terrifying. Like with the whole, we're gonna cut you open in so many layers, and the recovery is so much longer, and people make it sound scary. So,
Mhm.
like, what is some calming things to tell people about them? I guess.
I think it's just even before, like the night before, I am like worried because anything could happen.
Yeah.
And with the last C-section, my husband and I, we both like crying right before we went in because we're like, oh, this is just still so scary, even though we've been through this together before.
Yeah.
It's just scary because it's surgery. I mean, we're so excited we get to hand off the baby, but like, oh my gosh, like we're going to have surgery, like that's still just
And one of the I wouldn't say negative, but especially being a surrogate, having a C-section, you don't really get to hold baby. They'll show you.
mhm.
I mean, especially when I did it years ago, they showed me every
Yeah, they're
triplet
like,
that came out.
there
Then
you
they
go.
whisk them away. Even if it's a healthy baby, but these babies were healthy, but even if it's just a normal 40 week, 39 week, they take them and they start to do their thing to them. You're still there. You're going to be there. They got to sew up all those layers of
Yeah.
fascia and muscle and skin. They have to sew. So you're just kind of there. So where Grace said she got to text her parents and they texted back, like that to me would have kept me like in the loop rather than going, well, shoot, this is the finish. Hold on a second. And you're not, they're out enjoying their babies or baby, and you're like, what happened? Like you feel, I really felt like it was a finality. That was it. It was done. And I didn't get to see babies for hours afterwards. I didn't get to see parents for hours afterwards. Yeah.
I
Really
didn't
felt
get to see baby for days. So that was,
why
During
days?
COVID, right?
yeah, it
Oh
was during
yeah.
COVID.
That's
So
right. Yeah, that's
she
right.
was in the nursery while she was there, and we weren't allowed to go visit or do anything. They let the parents come talk to me for like half an hour in my room, but it felt kind of lonely. And then my husband, like, it was unsure whether he would get to come visit me every day or just at first they told him he could only stay however long he was able to stay after I came out of recovery. And once he went home, he wouldn't be able to come back because he had to go home
Right.
and be with our kids.
Yeah.
But they did let him come back each day, and he came back for a couple hours, but it was kind of lonely
Yeah.
that last
It is a
time.
little lonely. It is.
Aw.
The one thing I did like is I could drink as much water as I wanted to, and I didn't have to worry about getting up in the middle of the night and going to the bathroom. Like
Oh,
that
you
was
had a catheter?
that was lovely. Catheter, yeah, because you can't really get up until you get feeling back in your legs,
Oh,
because you
interesting.
could fall and break something, right? But I actually
Yeah.
loved that part because I was like, I was so done getting up in the middle of the night peeing 6 and 7 times. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. So that was a
I
positive for
figured
me.
mine out with all three of my C-sections. They came and took the catheter out pretty
Pretty quick.
quickly. Like as
Yeah.
soon as my feelings started to come back,
Right.
they're like, okay, well, we're gonna come pull your catheter and get you cleaned up.
Yeah. I think mine was left in for the 24 just because it was done so long ago, and I think they probably a little bit of a different maybe amount of medication. Maybe they've learned from that because I was down. I couldn't even get out of the bed for like 24 hours, which felt crazy for a type A personality because you want to do everything. You're like,
Yeah.
"Well, I can move. Let me do things." Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, I don't know. I'd much rather do vaginal, experiencing both.
Kennedy, have you ever watched a C-section like on, I think you can YouTube them. I'm sure
Yeah,
I
you can.
watched one on
I-
YouTube.
I have seen enough of a C-section.
Wow.
I used to be really into like those like my baby like stories on like, you know, documentaries or whatever.
TLC, yeah.
You know, they blurred out some gross parts, but I've seen enough and my mind can imagine. But yeah, it's I mean, obviously women do it all the time. It's nothing that's like, you know, out of the ordinary. And there's always risks whether it's vaginal or C-section. Like having a baby is just there's a risk involved, period. But it just always sounds so intimidating because now people are talking about it more and more. And it's like, look at all the layers they cut through. And it's like, that's too many. Like that's a lot. They're literally cutting through muscle. Like, and my sister-in-law is still numb in
Right.
some
I was just going to
places
say that.
in her abdomen. Like
I am too. I'm still numb too, Kennedy.
There's a part, there's like, I think from where my incision is up to like, I'd say like this amount is still numb for me. I don't think I'm ever going to get that feeling
Mhm.
back.
Because
Yeah, I
they
have
cut
a
through
little
the
patch
nerves
on
too.
one side.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, bless all of your hearts. All of your hearts.
I have a fun C-section story.
Okay.
So after I had my son, my second child, I had a repeat C-section, and they came and pulled the catheter, and they said, you know, just let us know when you feel like you have to go pee and we'll come get you and help you to the bathroom and we'll take care of you. And so I started feeling like I had to go, and I tried to call the nurse, and she's like, "Oh yeah, well, it's shift change, so we'll be there as soon as we can." And then I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and I really had to go. So I decided, I can do this. It was a really small room. I can walk myself. So I go into the bathroom, and when I sit down, the sensor for the automatic flush is like right behind my head. And after having a catheter, all 3 times, I felt like I really, like that first time going pee, I feel like I really have to concentrate on what I'm doing and like tell my body it's going to move things out the way it's supposed to. And so I'm sitting there and I'm concentrating, and I had my hands like this, like on my thighs. And I was rocking back and forth like this, like trying to remind myself, like tell my mind how to move my body. And since I had my hands like this for so long, my IV started to go off because it wasn't flowing through the way that it should. So my IV alarm's going off. And then because I was rocking back and forth and the sensor was right there, the toilet kept flushing over and over. And it was so distracting, and I got so angry, and I was like, I just want to pee. And then finally it happened, and I cheered for myself. And then the nurse came in and she's like, "Did you have to go?" And I was like, "Well, not only did I have to go, but like now you have to fix my IV too. So you should have come in when I called you."
Should have.
Yeah, come when I call you.
I always would turn on the water full blast. Like when I was in the bathroom the first time from a C-section, I would just turn it on and just concentrate. And then when I heard the water, it took a few, but I finally would end up.
That's really smart.
Yeah, because your body's just like, what? You just cut me open and now you want me to do what? Yeah. It's
I do want to ask, so because when you have a vaginal birth, they give you an epidural, but I know that it's different but similar when you have a C-section. Isn't it like it's like a spine
The final
it's a
tap.
spinal block.
It is. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
When you said Spinal Tap, I was literally thinking of like the movie. But like, so when do they do that? Like, okay, now so if you're gonna have a C-section, are you ever in a laboring room? Or like are you scheduled and like you just
you're
go?
scheduled, right? Then you go in, they put your IV
scheduled
in.
C-section for like a repeat schedule, but for my hospital, we go into the same labor and delivery room, go to the OR after, and then go back to the labor and delivery room
And then come
to recover.
Okay. And at what point then do you guys get your like spinal
Right before the C-section, they have you put your
in the
back,
OR.
got in the OR.
everyone's like moving around doing a bunch of things, and usually that's the part where I'm crying, and they're so helpful and so sweet to me, and yeah, they're really great. I love my team every time.
Oh my
I
God.
was at a teaching hospital, and so they let a person who was going to be a nurse put my catheter in.
What?
And I said, that's completely fine as long as I get that spinal block first. And they're like, oh yeah, no problem. So give me the spinal block.
I always ask that. I'm like, do that
Have at
last.
Oh, okay, so you get that, and then I'm just trying to understand how the whole room situation works. And so like they wheel you in there, obviously, on a bed. Do you switch beds?
No, sometimes you come in on a in a
Do you
wheelchair
walk?
and you
walk in.
or you walk and you transfer over to the OR bed. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just thinking you're getting like full queen service here. Like you don't lift a finger.
It's gonna be messy. I mean, there's blood and there's rags on the floor, and they're doing it's a surgery. It is an abdominal surgery. It's a big deal. So IVs are hooked up. You usually strap your hands down. Otherwise, but in Grace's instance, they didn't have to. And you're at their mercy, really. They talk to you, they tell you what's going on. But again, there is a sheet or a drape in front, so you can't really see the cutting. If you have a support person with you, which I did both times, he stood up and he gave me the blow by blow because I needed to know, what are they doing now? Oh, they're cutting you. Okay, what now? The first baby's out. Okay, cool. And I would hear that cry. So the tugging and the pulling, by the time they got to number 3, I was like, oh, I know what that is. That's another baby coming out. Okay, got it. But I needed to know because you don't, they're performing abdominal surgery on you. You can't see it. I wasn't all about that. So I guess people would pass out. I don't know.
I was really thankful they told me, because my first C-section was an emergency C-section, and I actually had an epidural in still and didn't do a spinal block. But they told me in my second and third one, well, I knew what to expect the third time, but they told me my second time, did not tell me this the first time, that they were going to be pushing the baby out from up near my chest. And so I had to be prepared for that pressure. And that is a wild feeling, like when they go in and push the
That never
baby out.
happened.
While you're in surgery for C-section, they're gonna push on you.
Yeah, like there's someone ready to catch the baby. I'm assuming the doctor, and then like a nurse, or my last C-section had 2 doctors in there, and one of them pressed on my upper, like at the top of my uterus, to help kind of push the baby out, and the doctor at the incision guided it out.
Is that because you never dropped? Is that because
I don't know. They did that both times.
did they? Wow.
Or
How about you,
maybe
Tara?
they did it all 3 times, but they didn't tell me that was going to happen the first time, so it was scary.
Yeah, I never got a push. Was that something they did for you, Tara? They pushed?
Yep, they would say, all right, you're gonna feel a little bit of pressure, and then you see my head like just bob pulling so hard, and then pull out the baby. The worst part for me was when they put the uterus back in.
Oh.
That sensation,
What?
because they take your uterus out and make sure, and whatever they do with it,
They clean it out.
Yeah, clean it
made
out.
me sick. That like the very first time that I had, not the first time, because I don't remember, I was like so whacked out from being in labor for so long. But with I think even my first C-section, when they put my uterus back in, I was like, I do not feel good. I was telling the anesthesiologist above my head, I was like, I don't feel good, something's happening to me. I'm like strapped down trying to get up. My husband and I still laugh at that, because I was like trying to get up while I'm in the on the operating table, but I just didn't feel good after that. But then my second time, I was so like thinking that was going to happen, and it didn't. I was like, oh, thank goodness. But they're like, yeah, when we put the uterus back in, it makes you feel sick. I was like, why? Why does it do that?
They got to fit it back in.
But why did they now I have more questions. Why are they taking it out if I'm seeing everywhere that they're cutting through like 7 layers? Aren't they cutting through the damn uterus?
They cut it open and then they take it out afterwards to clean it out and make sure that everything's good, and then start sewing it up, and then they put it back. If you really want a good read, somebody's after surgery note with the step-by-step not instructions, but like the play-by-play of how the surgery went, that will help clear up a lot of that.
That's so fascinating and weird. And this just popped in my head. Have you guys seen those like weird little where like they take the baby out and it's still like in its little sack?
Right.
Like, does that like happen all the time?
It can, but
I don't think so.
I mean, it can, because they're opening you up and the baby sack is there. So sometimes they'll open it up when it's there and take baby out, just depending. For triplets, each one was in their own sack. So we had 3 of that going on. So it was each baby they did. But the second time I had it, they took out and then cut it. That's because I had the other fetus that didn't make it still in.
Right.
So they did get that baby out. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
In my situation, that's what happened. I don't know what they do now. I don't know if they cut it while you're
Clearly
in.
they push on your stomach now.
No, I didn't do that.
That.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a weird one. I
Yeah.
guess it just gets baby where it needs to be. Because if you're cutting down here and baby's still up here, yeah, you can't get your hand in there and grab because it's still in the sack, right? That makes sense. That's why you have to push down. I don't know. Also, I'm gonna look that one up because that's interesting to me. Very interesting. I would not like that sensation.
Okay, how is your recovery after a C-section? Like, I know that like you hear like, oh, put a pillow in front of you, like when you're gonna sneeze or cough or something like that. But like,
You still bleed for 6 weeks.
oh, say it again.
You still bleed for 6 weeks.
Is it 6 or 8? Like, could you?
I mean, you get the 8 weeks off because you just had abdominal surgery, but
So the 2 extra weeks. Oh yeah, sure, woohoo! Like it should be longer, but that's fine.
But even though you didn't give birth vaginally, you're still going to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
With my second and third C-section, I didn't bleed for that long. With my first C-section, it was an emergency C-section. I lost a lot of blood. So I bled for a few weeks, but the first week for sure, I had giant clots, like the kind that they tell you to call the emergency for.
Yep.
They're like, well, if you're not filling a pad an hour, like just keep an eye on the clots and try to take it easy. And they finally stopped, but that was really scary. And then with my second and third, I didn't bleed for very long at all, like maybe 2 weeks at the most.
Okay. Yeah.
But with each C-section, the pain of recovery, I would say, has gotten harder, more difficult. This last time was really painful. And I do partly blame myself because when they were like, okay, get up and walk, and I didn't have a baby to take care of, I was doing laps around the maternity ward, and no one told me like, no, you should stop. They're like, oh, great, you did another one. Good job. And then after a lot of, like, I was in so much pain, and I had declined my last round of pain meds. And I was like, oh, I really want those pain meds now. And they're like, oh, well, since you declined the last round, you have to wait till this X amount of time before we can give you any more. It's like timed out. I can't even open the pharmacy. And that was really rough.
That sucks.
Oh my gosh.
That kind of stinks.
I have a question on that. Your pain meds, do you guys get like, is it like Norco and stuff? Like, because I mean, we get Norco, like Tylenol's,
Hydrocodone. Yeah. Norco, same thing.
Oxycontin ones. But
Nice.
with my first C-section ever, I didn't take anything at all because I had my son. Yeah, I didn't take anything. I was so scared that because I was breastfeeding, that I was like, no, I am already so tired because I was just in labor, and now I have this baby and I got no sleep, and now you want to give me medicine? I was like, absolutely not. So I roughed that one out. But I think I was like delusional for some reason, like the fact that I don't know how I'd made that through, because with my second C-section, I remember telling the nurse, I was like, excuse me, but I was like crying. I was like, I need something for the pain. But that was only one night. But then after like my second C-section, it was super good. But then ended up like opening again.
Like
So
your
that was,
incision?
yeah, it was so scary. It was so scary.
Were you in the hospital or at home when that happened?
So I was out of town, and I had put, because it wasn't like closing up all the way on one side.
Okay.
And so I put a Band-Aid over it because I was scared that it was gonna like get infected or something. Well, I went out of town, and there was a lot of pressure on it. I was like, oh, it hurts really bad. It's sore. And then I came home, I took the Band-Aid off. This is really gross. And it spit out pus all over the place. And it was I immediately called the doctor, and they're like, come back in. And then they like cleaned it out with a Q-tip, and they're like, no, it looks really good. It's just because you put a Band-Aid over it, it needs to breathe and stuff. I was like, that is, I thought they were gonna like stitch me up in the office. I was so scared because I was like, you're gonna stitch me up and it's gonna hurt so bad. But they were like, yeah, just leave it open, it'll close on its own. And eventually it did. That scared me. I don't know why that happened. I think that I was doing too much because I was like, I feel so good that I'm gonna just do everything, and I didn't give myself enough time to relax.
How do they close the incisions now? When I did it, I got staples.
Stitches.
My first two were stitches. And my second baby, my son, my stitches, like my scar was so tiny and perfect and beautiful. I work retail, and at the time I was working in stores all the time, and I'm really good with like faces and names and stuff. So I put in someone's like rewards information to ring them up, and I was like, oh, is your daughter so and so? And the woman said, yeah. And I said, she was my OB. She did such an amazing job with my incision. And looking back, that must be the weirdest thing anyone has ever said to her.
Right. How
While
funny.
checking out at a retail store. But she was like, oh, thank you. I'll pass the word along. She's won awards for her stitching. Yeah, she's really good. And so when I went for my last delivery with that, I had a different doctor, and I said, you know what, I want you to look at this scar right here. It's really pretty. Can I have the same one? And she's like, oh. She said, I use staples. And I said, I would really love if you could make an exception and do sutures. And she said, well, I usually do staples. And I said, yeah, and I would really love it if you can make an exception and do
Good for
sutures.
I
you.
feel Staples is lazy. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, they
is
don't
also
care.
how I feel. And so we were in the OR and she kind of made a big deal about it. She's like, hey guys, just so you know, we're going to be in here a little bit longer because she wants sutures instead of staples. And I was like,
Wow.
thank you so much for remembering. And then we got to the end, like they were done, they were suturing everything up. She goes, okay, guys, we're trying to finish up, but she wants sutures, so it's going to take a little longer still. And I
Wow.
got what I wanted, and I'm really glad, not only because I didn't want staples, but you also have to go back within a few days to have the staples removed. And I didn't want to have
Ouch.
to go back so soon. I wanted to recover longer.
Mhm. Yep.
That sounds brutal. Like, here, I'm
Yeah.
gonna staple you up and then I'm gonna pull them out. Just absolutely not.
Why? Yeah, you
Well, what-
just attacked that area so much. Why would you want to like like that sounds evil.
Yeah, I didn't go back in a couple days. I believe I went back, it was at least a week to 10 days. Might even been 2 weeks. And by that time things were healed. So taking them out, not healed completely, but taking them out was pretty easy. I mean, but still
I
the
think it was
sensation of that
I think it
was
was a
weird.
week they were gonna want me to come back, and
Yeah, I think it was a week, maybe 10 days.
I
Yeah.
wanted sutures.
Yeah,
Good for
I
you.
took, had I known. But the triplet incision, like I said, was huge. So I'm sure they were just like, yep. The next one, they opened up the same incision. And so I was like, oh crap, they're gonna have to do staples again because it's going through all that scar tissue. It was all right. I was used to it, but the sensation, and you hear the gut, you hear it like
Oh
Mm-mm.
I don't know. By that time, just all dignity out the window, and you're just like, can we just finish?
my gosh.
Yeah, kind of weird. I don't know.
Too much.
So I take vaginal over C-section most days. Most days.
Is there any tricks that any of you ladies like learned through C-sections, like recovery or anything like that? Like,
The pillow hold, when you're gonna cough or sneeze or laugh, make sure that you brace yourself.
yeah.
Um, you can't bend over as easy. You just have to really seriously. You had major surgery. Take it a little easier than you normally would if you just had a vaginal birth. And I'm not saying vaginal births aren't excruciating and hard and long labors and things like that, but it's not cutting your body open. You need some time, or you're going to continue to bleed.
I used the pads, like the maxi pads that the hospital gave me
On your
Mhm.
tummy?
on my incision because they're more rectangular than most pads you go buy at the store, and they were really cushy, and they have almost like a cloth-like texture to them versus a lot of the pads that you buy at the store have more almost like a plasticky kind of cloth feel. So I would put those over my incision, not because it was leaking or anything necessarily. It does leak just a little bit, just like clear fluid is fine,
Yeah.
but it's much more, it feels protected and
Mhm.
like my clothes aren't going to rub on it and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's a recovery hack that I would recommend.
Yeah.
Good one.
Good one.
That's a good one.
I got the Freedom Mom makes C-section recovery underwear, and
Ooh.
they're disposable and like environmentally friendly, which is important to me. So disposable, environmentally friendly, and they have a huge rise. So they go way up over your incision area and
Oh,
everything.
very nice.
Those were super comfortable. I bought them this last time.
What's the name
That
of them
works.
again?
The Freedom Mom brand.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it in mind.
Okay, that brings me to another question. So like I personally have always like after I deliver babies, it's always nice to like have your tummy be like held in a sense, like
Mhm.
have kind of like some pressure on it because like hi, you just had a baby in there and now like there's nothing. Um so do you guys do that? Can you do that?
They At my hospital, every time that I've had a C-section, they will, my come out of the OR, well, before I even leave the OR, they wrap me up. They put an ice pack there and they belly bind me like super tight.
Right.
And then they come in every few hours to not only push on my stomach, but then make sure I have a cold ice pack and then bind me back up. That one always feels like it's fine when I'm laying in bed, but when I come home, it's like super boxy. So I need to find something else because, yeah, that binding definitely is.
Comforting.
Yeah, especially because with me, after I've had C-sections, I have like what they call a belly apron. So it like hangs and
Oh,
over my incision, and it feels awful to
Yeah.
have like just that's why I like always say it. You know, remember on Click of how he does that thing with his stomach? That's literally what I compare it to, unfortunately.
it's
And
so
so
cute.
having something like tight around it feels
Yeah.
so much better.
So Tara, they come in and they still push on you to like
Oh
make
my
sure that there's
God.
no you guys
Yes.
just had surgery. I just can't fathom the pain.
Immediately after, they're like, and they push hard.
Hard.
Oh my
A few times I even like held the side railings and I was like, oh my gosh.
God, that hurts, right? You just
It
got cut
hurts
open.
bad.
Yep.
That's the worst. I think I know I already described what I felt like the worst, like when I walked a whole bunch of laps, but I think that pain is worse
Yeah.
when they come in right after. And the last baby I had, my first surrogate, I kept asking for pain meds in the recovery room, and they'll give them to you like injectable pain meds because it was pretty bad. I tried to wait it out as many times of them coming back in and doing that as I could, but we got to like time number 4 and I was like, oh, you're gonna have to give me something because it hurt
Yeah.
so bad. And I think my husband didn't realize I had warned him, like, oh, they're going to come in and push on my stomach and it hurts a lot. And I think that he didn't remember from our kids because he was preoccupied with the baby. And
Mhm.
so him watching me go through that while he sat that whole time with me in recovery without a baby he had a hard time watching. It was
Aw.
really painful. He was very supportive, but it was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a question. Yeah. How are your support people like in the C-section recovery and like room? Like, do they play a role? Like an important role for you
Oh
guys?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they do.
Okay.
Yeah, my husband has like every he's only been with me for my surrogate pregnancy. He wasn't with me for my son. So this was his first time ever experiencing anything, but he like helps me up completely, like getting up because I can't use my stomach muscles. So he's lifting me off the couch, off the bed, helping me walk. Just has to do everything. I can't pick anything up. Just like when I have C-sections, like for the surrogate babies, I need him to be there with me because I also can't drive, can't take my son anywhere. So it definitely, it's like a two-person people that both have to be here. I've asked within contracts that after delivery that he needs to be off for at least 2 weeks because after that I can do it. But that
Yeah.
those first 2 weeks, like I am, I'm hardly walking around, so definitely need support.
And then in the actual OR, they're your advocate. They're your advocate. You can whisper something to them, or they can kind of come down and he can or she can talk for you, or you can talk, but you're just so like myself anyway, just kind of mesmerized, just kind of like, okay, this is happening. You just never think you're going to be there. You just never think you're going to have a C-section because you're like, oh, vaginal. And then you have to go in. And mine for the triplets, it was an emergency as well. So everything moved so fast. The minute they said we're going in, like people flew, like they came out of the walls. I didn't know how many people, where did you all come from? Like, and then everybody's in the OR and everybody's ready. And you're like, oh crap, I guess I'm the main event. Here I go. And you just lay down. And then people they do their job so well, they just go right into action. And from the time you literally are laying on the table, once your spinal block takes effect, like it can be 60 seconds before the baby's out. It's that fast. It's boom, done. But then you're there for an hour and a half, sewing back up and so the hype of it all is really, really tiny. But the afterwards, and in my instance anyway, the after effects are you're just laying there and you're just like, okay, can I get something to drink? Can I go back to my room? I'm tired now. But support person, I do think they're important.
I
The
call my
entire
husband, I think of him as the reporter
Yeah.
when I've been in C-sections because he'll sit there and chat with me, and then he stands up and he looks at what's going on, and then he comes back down and he tells me.
Yep.
And my favorite news that he reported with our first baby was the color of her hair. I married a
Oh.
redhead, and I wanted redheaded kids so
Oh,
bad.
So
And
cute.
so when she came out, he stood up and he looked at her and he came back and he said she has dark hair. And then I love his little reports. And then as a support partner at home, my favorite thing that he does, like he helps me with all the things like Tara described, but my favorite thing is every C-section I've had, he goes to the grocery store right after we get home and he picks up everything that we need. And then we come home, and I call it the parade of food. And for whatever reason, he brings every single item one at a time to the door and shows me what he bought. I got you this, and I got you this.
Oh my
And
God.
we needed Cheez-Its, so I got the double box.
Oh my gosh, so cute. That's so cute.
Oh, that's cute.
Oh,
Really
no,
sweet.
that's great. And like, the question that came to my head, which kind of has to do with this, but your recovery, right? So, how long until you guys feel normal again?
8
Mm.
weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
Yeah.
normal, like feeling like okay, pretty much like that.
back, yeah, like back to like what you could do before you got pregnant.
I'd say, yeah, for me, like the last one, 4 to 5 weeks out of that first week, I had the C-section, and then I met with my intended parents like 4 days later to bring milk, and they're like, "Are you okay?" They're like really worried about me. Apparently, I looked really pale and like really tired because I was getting up every 2 hours to pump, like
Right.
on a newborn type schedule. But then when I came back and saw them like 4 days after that, they're like, "Oh, you look a lot better. Like you really made us worry." And I was like, "Wow, thanks. I clearly look like that." But it must have just been from like losing blood from a C-section and just being tired. But yeah, to feel like good again, I'd say about 4 to 5 weeks at least.
Okay.
All
I
three
had all-
times I was really sore. Like
Yeah.
all I could describe is like sore muscles from hip to hip until like 8 weeks is really when it started to go away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like kind of similar to a vaginal in a sense, with depending if you tear and whatever.
I
stuff like
think vaginals, you
I think you can recover quicker with vaginal.
start doing your normal things, especially if you have kids at home. Like you're used to picking them up from school and taking them to their activities. And you can't drive with the C-section for, I don't know the limits now, but back then I was a good 2 to 3 weeks. I was not allowed to drive.
So you
Like,
can't drive?
Yeah,
no.
I drove after, like my dad needed me to do something, and I was only 2 weeks postpartum, and I remember like turning to look, and I was like,
Right.
"Holy crap, this
dear.
is awful."
And the main reason is because if you get into an accident, that incision will just tear.
Oh my God.
It's not, you're not nowhere near healed. So there's a reason for I'm sure I drove before I should have, but
I'm sure you did too.
I had 3 kids. And so, yes, it took me probably after the C-section. Well, with the triplet side of complication, I had 3 placentas, so it didn't clamp off. And I thought we were all good. And
Uh,
then I started to lose baseball sized clots, and it just wouldn't stop. And it was just, my husband calls it Freddy Krueger bathroom. Like a 911 had to come. It was so bad. So I had to go back in and get blood transfusions. But so after that, I started feeling miraculous because I didn't know I was losing so much blood. Yeah, but a while.
I told you I'm gonna ask all the freaking questions. Okay, so when you're in there, are you losing more blood than you would in a vaginal? Like, do you guys have like, are you guys getting blood put back in you, or do you guys have to
my
take more iron?
my first one, I lost a lot of blood where it was like to the point where I almost needed a transfusion. I think if it would have been like now, because that was like 12 years ago, even then, I feel like that was a lot of blood to lose. And it was really bad. And they had warned me, like, you might not be able to breastfeed because your milk might not come in. But my milk came in like immediately. Like, it was very surprising, but I felt like so exhausted after that. But then the second and third C-section, they didn't say, "Oh yeah, you lost a ton of blood." But yeah, I don't know if it's because I labored forever and then had a C-section as to why that would have happened, but
Yeah.
I lost a lot of blood my first one too, and I had done 18 hours of labor first. And my mom thinks that I maybe had like a placental abruption, like something was going on because the baby's heart rate um wasn't recovering between contractions, which was the main reason for the emergency C-section.
Right.
And then I kept telling the nurses right before they decided to do the C-section, I was like, God, my stomach really hurts. It feels really weird and it really hurts. Not like cramping. It was the weirdest feeling. And then they took me back and I ended up losing a lot of blood. And then I had all those clots afterwards. So my mom thinks that I might have had something going on with the placenta. But they never said that they said I almost needed a transfusion, but they never told me what happened, like if there was an abruption or something weird had happened. But then same thing for my other two C-sections. It was just a normal amount and I felt pretty good afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because bodies are weird. You can bleed internally and not know it.
yeah.
And then by the time you figure it out, you're past the point of no return and you need the blood transfusion, like to get you back up. It's scary. Yeah. Because it'll just come out of you in clots. You're like, oh, hey, what's this?
Yeah. But you guys, like, having a C-section doesn't mean you're gonna be put on like iron supplements. Like, it doesn't like
I
Both-
was, but it's because I lost so much blood. But no,
That just
Yeah.
depends on the blood loss.
okay.
I had to go in every other day to get it tested to see what my levels were because he wanted them coming up. So I was eating like malto meal and kale. I was like, ugh. I just had a whole list of like iron rich foods, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Yeah, but then my body picked up and it started to do it by itself. But still, and then you take iron supplements and then you get constipated. So then it's just a catch-22 anytime I know.
It
But
just
hey,
all sounds wonderful.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I never had a C-section with one of you guys. It was always surrogate babies. So I had to look at the end prize on that one. Like, hey, it got us to the end result. All babies are
Yeah.
healthy. Like, that's how I looked at it.
Yeah. Do you ladies have any advice for anybody who's gonna be having a C-section or like anything?
Pre-make meals.
Hmm.
Pre-make meals.
That's
I had
smart.
some very nice friends and neighbors who made meals, and because they knew we had 3 kids, and they brought meals over, which was really great. Rather than taking the kids out for like fast food, but if you can pre-make frozen stuff and you can just pull it out, that's helpful. I remember if you can have your bills like paid up because you don't know how long you're going to be in the hospital. Like, I guess you can do it from your phone. Back when it was like you had to write the check and send it because it was like years ago. But I know, silly stuff.
Check. What's
Silly
a
stuff.
check? I don't even know what that
Silly
is.
stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Just have your supplies ready at home. Like have your
Yeah, I made a basket next to my bed with everything that I needed, like pumping supplies. I had my medication in it, just random things, that lip balm that I thought I would need because I knew that my bed was going to be my living space for at least a couple weeks.
yeah.
And I didn't want to have to be reaching for things or constantly getting up for things. So I tried to prep all that stuff. And then I had a basket in the bathroom too, with right by the toilet with everything that I might need in there.
Smart.
And I do remember your dad. I had a little cooler, so he would put some snacks and
My
some
dad?
water and stuff. Yeah, your dad. Some snacks and some water in there because after the triplets, I was kind of down. So I would be able to have food throughout the day and not have to get up and go and get it. For the first week to 10 days, it was rough go because I was back in the hospital and then back home. So we did kind of like 2 recoveries. So that was really helpful. Every time I wanted something to eat because he wasn't here, like I have to get up. Yeah, no. So that was helpful.
I don't know. Did we not cover anything? You ladies are the ones that had C-sections. I'm just the one over here knocking on wood and crossing fingers.
I just don't want surrogates to think it's as scary as maybe it seems to be. You just gotta inform, just read up on it. Even if your knowledge is, hey, listen, I'm doing a vaginal, you never know. You may get in there and it's an emergency and boom, you gotta go read up on it. If you can watch films on it. I know hospitals have classes on it. Like get informed so you're not thrown off. It's still going to be a scary situation, but it doesn't have to be as scary as if you don't know anything about it. Like that's the one tip I could say.
They stay calm too. Like just know that you're in good hands. There are lots of variables that could come up, but just staying calm is important. I went into labor before, right before my last C-section, so trying to stay calm.
Oh, for
All of
real?
that was important too. Like I started having regular contractions like at one, yeah, like at 1 a.m. the night before.
Oh,
So I was like,
wow.
oh, do I go in? Do I not go in?
Oh my God.
And I decided to just like try to sleep through it and see what happened. And they kind of slowed down and then they picked back up when I woke up. And I was like, well, I'm just going to stay calm and just like pretend they're not happening. And hopefully they just like stop. And we had to be at the hospital pretty early anyway.
Mhm.
And it worked out.
I'm gonna call you because you have the voice of calm. So like I'll
Yeah,
just call
you
you,
do.
Grace, and like it'll be fine.
She always has the right things to say. Grace is so wonderful.
She is. She says you say everything so eloquently and
You
like
do.
For
you
real. When I went through everything with the miscarriage, she was there, and I told my husband what she was saying to me. I was like, she's saying such perfect things to me to make me feel better. And he's like, see, it's gonna be okay. And I was like, oh, she's so wonderful.
And you're so wonderful, Tara. Like
Yes, Tara.
thank you for sharing your story, with
Yeah,
everybody on social media
okay.
and for showing your strength. Like you
Yeah.
are an inspiration, absolutely. I told you that. And like it's
Thank
wonderful. And you deserve the whole world, girl. And it's coming. It's coming.
I stopped because I got aged out. That's why, or else I would have kept going.
I think I'll be too old after this next one.
Yeah, I had my last one at 41, and that it took a toll. And I really believe it was age. It just took its toll. My body was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're old. I'm older now. He said,
Old.
41. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to stop anyway, but really, that's a lie. I was going to keep
That's
going.
such a lie.
And I actually looked into independent. Independent is not as, it was not as easy back then as it is now because you had no clue who you were getting with. Like
Right.
no clue. You couldn't vet anybody through anything. It was just a, should I do this or not? So it was too big of a risk. So that's why I didn't go independent.
You would find each other in the classified ads.
Yeah, that's how people find houses. Like we had something called the Penny Saver. There's
Yeah.
was ads in there for weird.
How funny.
Yeah, no.
I do see surrogacy on Craigslist, which makes me like chuckle and like
No,
yeah,
what
no.
way?
I swear you can go on Craigslist and type in surrogacy
Oh,
or
no.
whatever, and it's like looking for a
Yeah.
surrogate, and I'm like,
That's
ooh,
scary.
Mhm.
That's so scary to me.
yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
yes.
Thank you so much, ladies. Seriously.
Yes,
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for being who you are and for sharing your stories and everything and for sharing your C-sections as well and advice.
Thank
So,
you
Guys
for
bring
having
so
me.
much knowledge to the table. It's so nice.
yes.
So nice. It
I
is.
know. Well, thank you again, ladies,
Yes, thank
so
you.
much. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in a couple
We
weeks.
will.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Thank
Take care, you
you.
guys.
Bye.
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 They're so lovely.
Love
They
them.
really are.
They
They're
really
so
are.
sweet. Yeah.
They're just very calm to talk to, and they're
Yeah, and just
and-
experiencing what they've experienced. Like they've had
yeah,
more recent C-sections than I did, so some of my
yeah, and
stuff's not relevant.
to say hard stuff with grace is really hard. Like just
Yeah, and they do it very, very
elegant
well.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And I mean that concludes C-sections.
Woohoo.
So woohoo! If you guys have any questions or would like to share your stories or have any tips or tricks for recovery or C-sections in general, drop them in the comments. Please feel free to reach out to me at Stop.Sit.Surrogate on Instagram.
Then another edition of Friday Facts with Stop Sit Surrogate with Kennedy and Ellen. Bye guys.
Bye guys.